Order three, meeting of District 1A, talking about Riverside Park, in terms of how the Conservancy does our management and operations. District 1 represents not only Riverside, but Front Park and Prospect through the west side, because they're all small parks. But we want to focus this conversation, obviously, on the Riverside community, trying to do that all in one big conversation. You got people from all over the city. So this is, again, a quarter three meeting of the Olmsted Community Alliance. Thank you all for coming out, those of you here and those of you participating on Zoom. Want to acknowledge a representative from Assemblymember Bill Conrad's office, Peter, here with us. Thanks for coming out. And then Evelyn, always here on behalf of Councilmember Golombek. And you all, thanks for coming, representatives from Black Rock Riverside Alliance, as well as others. So, in terms of our typical meeting agenda, again, we got an hour and a half to go through things. We try and keep the my talking to a minimum, but there are a number of projects and different information trying to get out there, but also it's a lot about getting your voices heard, community concerns brought up. So keep the introductions brief and get into the projects and the discussion. You did grab an agenda in the back. So really the discussion items, those are going to be the three big things that we talk about. And then there's brief updates on small things that are moving along and updates on issues and then upcoming events. But, in terms of park issues and concerns, that's really for you guys to sort of bring things to the table that aren't on the agenda. In terms of introductions, I'm Brian Dole, the Director of Planning and Advocacy. My partner is Z. She's the Director of Inclusion and Engagement. We've also got Chrissy, our new volunteer coordinator here. Her picture's a little bit later. But in terms of our leadership team, people who will pop in and out of this process, our Executive Director, Stephanie, Director of Park Administration, sees Capital Projects Implementation, Greg, our Chief Officer of Development and Communications, Katie, she does our fundraising and communications, and then operations through Bob. But also in terms of operations for this district, recently promoted Anthony White, District Supervisor, and his right-hand man, Devote Pompey. So they're out here focused on Riverside and as well Front Prospect. We also have Demetrius, new hire in the room here. I'm here for him. Day 6 on the job, right? 6? All right. And then in terms of people who sort of roam the whole system, again, we've got parks all over the city. Mike Sawyer handles our trees. Charlie Tarr handles our buildings. Eileen Martin handles circles and plantings. In terms of what the Alliance is all about, really have 4 main objectives. Again, it's really about community dialogue. You all sort of representing voices from your community and bringing information back to them if people can't make it in the room. We also are always trying to implement projects to improve the parks. We do that through a larger process based on the Restoration Master Plan called the 5-year plan. So that's basically what are the priorities for the short term that we sort of vet every 5 years. And then as well, as I think we'll talk about today, this is kind of a living and breathing document that's always open to revisiting and reprioritizing as community needs dictate. But again, it's really about increasing awareness, increasing outreach. If you know people who have opinions about Riverside Park and they're not aware of these meetings, please share that information, get them into the room, because these conversations are only as good as the people participating in them. And then we like to turn your participation into action through volunteerism, through stewardship out in the parks. Again, we do this 5 times every quarter. So we're here in District 1, but we also do these meetings in 4 other neighborhoods across the system with other parks we have. And again, your job is very simple, just to sort of be here, represent your passion, represent your community, and try and get more people in the room. So with regard to, again, the agenda and rolling through the big discussion items and the progress associated, what we try and do every meeting, ignore that South District again. Sorry, I try to update these with every district, but sometimes I miss the titles. So in terms of what we try and do is educate people about the role of the Conservancy in the city in each step of each part of our organization, each step in the process. So today we're really focused on operations and maintenance in terms of explaining a little bit more about the roles. So you can see here, we've had a partnership since 2004. We keep renewing that partnership with the City of Buffalo. And currently we are renewed through 2029 with a 5-year review. A sort of 5-year review is a pretty common theme that we'll be doing in a couple years. A lot of words here, but we thought it was important just to sort of lay it all out in terms of the responsibilities of the BOPC and the responsibilities of the city as the property owner. So in terms of the Conservancy, we're cutting the grass. We're taking care of the trees. We're taking care of the gardens. We're picking up the trash. We're dealing with graffiti as it's small, major vandalism. We pull in the city and they've got a crew. But dealing with graffiti, that's on us. Dealing with the park furnishings and the benches and maintaining those. In the wintertime, handling all the sidewalks, the walkways in terms of snow removal and salting. In terms of the courts, the maintenance of the courts, the nets, etc. The athletic fields, do all the maintenance and the striping there. Golf courses doesn't apply up here, but we've got 3 golf courses throughout the system. We handle not only the maintenance, but the management. Irrigation system, so River Rock Gardens irrigation system, we handle that. The city provides the water. We handle it from beyond the backflow preventer. Any portable toilets out there, we handle that contract. With regard to the equipment, we'll do the maintenance, we'll do the gassing, the greasing, the sharpening of blades, but repairs, again, it's the city-owned equipment, they do all the repairs. So in terms of major repairs, it goes back to the engineering facility. And then with regard to the park facilities, we do the cleaning of buildings and the maintenance of park facilities, unless there is a separate contract with the city for the use of those facilities. So in this case, we've got Hash's Heroes, we've got Saba, we've got, the River Rock Little League. But again, in terms of our relationship with the city, it's all about a partnership. So, we're not drawing lines in the sands, we're working together, we're collaborating where we can. But the city, yeah.
Does that mean like graffiti on the concession stand is responsibility of the River Rock Little League?
No, it's eye contact. Typically, I contact Bert, and Bert sends somebody out from the mayor's impact team to assess the graffiti, usually immediately.
Okay, so the city then takes care of that. You don't.
Yeah. So we might be out there and coordinate. We'll help where we can, again, with repainting stuff. But we'll notify the city of these things, because we're out there every day. The city, has responsibilities in the parks, but, that's the communication side of things. In terms of those city responsibilities, again, the pickup of all trash and recycling from the totes, landscape debris disposal contract. So in terms of the debris we make in the parks, they've got the contract for disposal. Roads and parking lots, street sweeper, everything related to light poles is the city responsibility. In terms of the courts, the tennis courts, basketball courts, the resurfacing, that's on the city. With roadways, all repairs and maintenance on the city, with roadways as well. All the snow plowing and salting of roads. In terms of pathways and parking lots, any repairs, potholes, etc., cracks, tripping hazards, that's a city responsibility. City-owned equipment, repairs, as we talked about in the fueling contract. City takes care of that. Everything related to water in terms of storm sewer, water bodies, but in addition, all of the ornamental fountains throughout the city, as well as the public pools, maintenance and management, all city responsibility. Again, things related to infrastructure in terms of structural improvements for the facilities to make sure they're safe and operational. And then again, with the Arts Commission, all the monuments, the statues, the maintenance and repairs there. And then related to police, parking enforcement, etc. That's all with the city. But again, as we talk about this, there's communication, there's partnership. We're not pointing fingers at each other. We're working collaboratively to make sure things get done. So in terms of just taking that, all that information and mapping it out, sort of here is Riverside Park. Think about that yellow boundary as sort of that park boundary. Conservancy is taking care of a lot of the green. But again, we've got roads, we've got pools, we've got other buildings occupied by other groups, courts, and public art. So any questions or discussion with regard to the roles in this public-private partnership? Again, this is pretty unique across the nation in terms of the public, municipality partnering with a nonprofit organization, sort of collaborating, take these things on. We think it works pretty well. It's all clear to people?
With the ice rink.
Yeah.
You've got Solid in there, you've got National Spears in there. Who's responsible for the upgrades to the ice rink?
So in terms of the contract that the city has with Hashtag Heroes, in the same way the city would take care of that facility and sort of manage those projects. So right now the city engineering is managing the project to redo all that ice. And Hashtag Heroes has the operation agreement. So they probably do the same way, the cleaning and the maintenance, the way we do for other parks buildings.
They don't do major capital improvements.
Not, I mean, they could potentially do fundraising, but the execution would be the city. Yeah.
Brian, and I don't mean to justify, I really don't, but this is a really good example of how did this get prioritized? I mean, the ice rink suddenly was under construction. So I don't think anybody in the community knew about it. I don't think there were any meetings. It was just suddenly being fixed. So, we're talking about an open and connected partnership, yet nobody knew anything about it. Is that true, or did you know, or I mean?
Yeah, I think that's I think the goal of this. Again, this is I think the fourth meeting of this group. We've been doing this for a year, but that project I believe has been in the works for a few years to sort of get to the point where they're under construction. So again, we need to improve our communication at all levels with the city, but also the goal of these meetings is to make sure that we're getting information from the city and making sure everybody's involved. We do have a lot of projects that are backlogged that are happening now, but we didn't have the opportunity to be out in front of, fortunately, all through the system.
If in fact we're going to have constructive dialogue, then somebody from the city needs to be here.
Say that one more time, sorry.
If we're going to have a constructive dialogue, then somebody from the city needs to be here.
Yeah, can you do the city park and the ice rink projects that we've done? Because right now, all of our ice hockey players have to go to Cas Park, because Tacoma is closer, but they're overbooked.
Yep.
And so now everybody's got to go down to Southtown, to South Buffalo, in order to play ice hockey, and that's not convenient for a lot of, especially our youth players. So what's the timeline for that project, do you know?
I do know that the major thing that needs to happen still is coordination with National Grid on new electrical service. So I wish I had an exact date on the timeline of that. I will get that and report it back. I think it is information that Steve Buselli, the project manager, has in his head. I didn't get that, but I do know the big task left is National Grid related. But it's very close to being done.
They
Yeah.
physically need to be here telling us.
Yeah,
So we need to ask.
we will take that note and we'll ask them to come. But yeah, so what we do after these meetings, so again, not to answer your question, Mary Ann, but it's just in terms of how we handle this is we go through this series of meetings, we assemble all the notes, and then we have a sit down with definitely Deputy Commissioner Rabb. Ideally, we're also having conversations with each of the council members and updates too. Those don't always happen every meeting, but that's the idea, is that we're the sort of funnel. It'd be good to have everybody in the room here today. Not everybody can make every meeting, and no excuses, but we do communicate all this stuff back, get answers, and bring them. So sort of a telephone, chain reaction kind of thing. Any other thoughts with regard to the maintenance partnership? Again, this is just a component of what the Conservancy is, but it's a big part of getting the job done.
Field.
Hmm?
How's the football field going?
The football field, so the project is closed out from the city side. Again, it's a city project. It's closed out in terms of the improvements. The contractor defaulted on the contract, so it is in legal review in terms of any final payments to the contractor for the work they did not do. So I think, again, we're all wish that project had gone more smoothly and more efficiently, but you don't always get a good contractor on these projects, and the only recourse at a certain point is legal. So that's what the city's doing. But they did come out and do additional overseeding this spring with a separate contractor with additional sort of money from a different pot to get turf established that the previous contractor failed to do.
Can I ask you, we're putting boulders. You put boulders around to try to keep the cars from coming in. But I can guarantee you, there's still cars coming in.
Every day.
Yeah.
We're from River Rock, we're the baseball league, and I am ready to talk about what goes on.
Yeah.
I live across the street from the park.
Yeah, so that actually gets it in terms of brief updates. I'm happy to give it. I got a slide, but under brief updates, park perimeter traffic controls, the city has earmarked money for next year to do, major expansion of that perimeter safety control. In terms of how you do that, the model has been boulders and removable bollards and pathways. Not everyone's favorite thing, but it's works. When you actually create a comprehensive ring, you actually can, keep cars out. If you only do it a certain section, you just go to the end of the boulders and, come around the outside. So we'll follow up on that, but significant money in next year's budget. So I got a slide. We'll continue to take additional thoughts on that. But that is planned to be fixed. They're currently in terms of in the Olmsted system. The first priority was MLK Park because there's major issues there. Lots of picnics, lots of vehicles flying through. There's been a lot of close calls with kids and cars, out in the lawn, which is crazy. And then also Front Park is identified as issue in Riverside.
And the same thing with Riverside.
Yeah.
I have seen too many people pushing their strollers, getting out of the way.
Yeah.
Of a vehicle. It's really upsetting. Because I sit on my porch and drink coffee and watch it every day.
Mhm. Yeah, so that is coming down the line. And again, input on how we do that will get vetted through this committee as they activate their consultant on that project. Any other thoughts on this level? Again, just one of the topics we're going to talk about. All right. Then this is relatively brief, but I wanted to sort of tee up the next conversation introducing this. So last meeting, I introduced the fact that the city had produced their Parks Master Plan, and we talked about like how I want to start sharing this. So I started to put together a presentation outlining the whole thing, and I got about 25 slides into it, and Stephanie said, I think you're going to kill everyone with all this information. So I think what you need to do is go back and ask, what do you actually want detail on out of this plan? Everyone's free to read the whole document themselves, but there is a lot of information that I can certainly make the effort of summarizing, but going through the whole thing was going to be too much of a task without actually hearing what you want to hear about. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to keep interrupting, but I think it's a really important point. Ann and I had kind of reviewed both this master plan and the Olmsted one. There are no goals and objectives in this. There are no goals in this, and they're really nebulous. But besides that, some of the statistics that they use, we talked about it a little bit earlier, they rate how much park space you have, whether you have a dire need or a medium need or a poor, you don't need anything because you got enough parks. So the standard is 10 minutes to the closest park, but the city includes everything that they can. So they include traffic circles on parks, as parks.
And, and then they prioritize our sections of the city based on how many people have a 10-minute walk to the nearest park. So because over in Black Rock, we have 4 traffic circles that they cut because it's in the parks inventory. We don't have a high need for a park. There are no parks in Black Rock unless you go over to Assumption Church, but over on Niagara and Amherst Street, other than the private park that is the corner of Niagara and Amherst, there are no parks. So all those people in that 10-minute radius are not considered a priority. And the data is flawed. They missed areas that have community gardens that are privately owned. They're not in the parks inventory, so they don't count. So now this area is void of park area because they didn't bother counting all of the residence gardens that are, or they don't have an update of all the residence gardens that are in that area. So, you know, I don't hold a lot of stock in this master plan. And again, as Marianne said, there's like no specific action points. There's just big picture goals. And unfortunately, Black Rock and Riverside are considered both priority areas because we've got Riverside Park and we've got other green spaces that the city has.
Yeah.
So how do we fix that?
So, I mean, I think me sitting down with you two, who obviously put a lot of effort into this, I think would be a good first step. But in terms of thinking about that, that's sort of getting at like unpacking the details of how they did their planning work. And, you know, in this case, perhaps calling attention to, you know, you're saying you got a 10-minute walk to this park. This is not a meaningful park. This is not meeting the needs. This, you know, this is other than being a place so we can stand on grass. This is not.
And then there's the facilities.
It's not qualified.
within those. So there are no facilities within those parks.
Exactly, yeah.
There's no bathroom facilities, there's no recreational facilities, there's no facilities. So
Yeah.
you've got green space, but you don't really have a functioning park with it.
So that's, yeah, so that's
It's a
again
huge
getting
flaw.
in.
It's a huge flaw in this master plan. And
Yeah.
I don't know if you want me to go on to tell Andy Graham that. I'm more than happy to point it out to him because I sat and went through that every page and every piece of data that they collected on it. And it doesn't work for us. And it's not what you brought us. How many other areas are equally as flawed? I just happen to be very familiar with the North District.
Mhm.
So, anyway.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, I would
I
say.
need to tell you that you may not even thought about it.
So what is valuable in here, you know, may not be the conclusions, but there is a lot of good data. So in terms of the amenities, in addition to the report, there is the interactive parks maps. So almost a tool to criticize the report, I guess, is actually this functionality here, which, you know, I encourage you guys to explore it. There is a pull down tab with filters and sort of teeing up the next conversation. I went through, pulled up this map and clicked on where are all the splash pads, and they just pop right up. So all the splash pads in the city are here. So, and again, I think leading us into the conversation, you know, where are we missing splash pads? Up in this community is the answer.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because if you cross that with a filter for all of the pools in your outdoors, almost every place other than Riverside, I think there's one other location that has a pool, an outdoor pool that does not have a splash pad. And we are one of only 2 in the city that don't have an alternative water area for our kids in the summertime.
Mhm. Yes, because, yeah, like you're saying, Riverside does have 2 pools.
I'm a daddy, so I
Yeah.
love this kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
And it's really been useful as we've been working with Demetrius on, you know, like getting people to understand how significant a disparity this is for our community.
Yeah.
I'd like to bring up something too about the splash pad. Since 1955, I think I know this park living across the street from me, okay? there used to be a splash pad right by the big pool. And you guys have flood issues sometimes there with water because that's where the splash pad is. So the question is, why can't we have the splash pad there? And the other thing, I'm looking at this map, you have to understand, and now that we have someone from the uppers, we had a place in the park to go over to the river. But it's not handicap safe because it's like this. I dare you, I double Dutch dare you, put someone in a wheelchair and start to push them down, and try to push them up. Okay?
Only if you don't like them.
Exactly. Who don't you want to put in a wheelchair? What I'm saying is, that's the only place in Ontario Street. You got Black Rock that's cut off from the water. You've got Riverside cut off. I'm so old, I remember the towpath with the houses, okay? Seriously. I hate to say it, but you destroyed our waterfront. I think what you're doing in Buffalo is phenomenal. Don't get me wrong, Buffalo River. It is not a river is being completely cut off and all the people. And Riverside Park deserves their splash pad. That little pool was closed more than it was open because little guys leak. Put it nicely.
Sleep,
In the
yeah.
wrong
Okay.
end.
I get
And
what
then
you're
the
saying.
pool has to coach. You have to
Yep.
drain the pool. You have to disinfect it. Then you got a splash pad would be much more conducive to our area.
Got it.
Okay, I'm just saying that
Sure.
it's simple things, and we need where the houses are. That's where we actually need another crossover, but handicap accessible.
Even just crosswalks there and signage, kids at play, and crosswalks where you can get from the residential side of Crowley to the park. I just did a CPTED training, the certification course that I'm
Yeah.
was doing. And my project for that certification course was that corner of Riverside Park. And I don't know if you shared it with me.
No, please do, yeah.
Because crosswalks, even police officers, we had 5 net officers in our class, and so we partnered with them to work on our plan. The first thing the police officer that I was paired with said was, there are no crosswalks, there's no signage. Somebody stuck a stop sign in a garbage, in a bucket with.
I pick it up all the time.
I saw that, yeah.
And there's no handicap parking, parking lot, the parking spaces aren't even marked. There's no notification that there's an entrance area to the park on that side. I mean, it's just, and it's just signage on alley. I mean, this is a little thing. And then, we're talking about putting cameras around the concession stand. That is the perfect place to monitor. They've got electricity, that's not an issue. The city's been getting a shitload of people donating security cameras to other parts of the city. We're gonna bring 10 of those into our park.
Thank you.
Yep.
Paint them mural, gorgeous.
We're on the building, we're all over it. Yeah.
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 Okay, Bronx is not. So, we can talk, and then put the splash pad there, because the that means that there's gotta be a parking employee there while the splash pad is operational. They will be keeping a better eye on things. Park workers in there anyway, so, somebody from the parks department will be there. You can take down that fence, and there isn't anybody from the parks department from Olmsted there is.
Right.
But not
Olmsted
from the
said.
Parks Department. But if the Parks Department opens a splash pad, they will have to have a staff person there. It doesn't have to be a lifeguard, but my understanding is they're required to have a staff person on duty when the splash pad is on. So, and then the other thing is, I know they're working on like the bushes and things like that. Everything's been so overgrown. I went and took pictures of that place. It was so overgrown. You couldn't even look into past the fence from Jackie's front yard. you couldn't see what was going on in that playground. That's not safe for these kids. We have the most vulnerable kids in our community, the most vulnerable people in our community in that play area, and you can't even see them from the street to make sure they're safe.
That talking really advocates we got.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you guys have been really working on that area lately, so, and that's good news. You know, and then the other thing is, you know, the crime rate there, you know, there's statistically, you have one out of every 27 people is a victim of a crime in Riverside Park.
Where is that from? What's that?
There's some statistical data on crime rates. for the
Okay,
park
that's
area.
interesting. If you could send me that,
Yeah, I will.
where that came from, that's great.
It's,
Yeah.
it's to the point, if you put the splash pad over there, you can take, but you have to have a fence for the children, a long playground, and with a splash pad, so they don't run out to the
Sure.
traffic. And she's right, there have been so many accidents at the corner of Crowley and I can't continue to tell you, I think we could make money off
Put
of
a
it.
couple of speed bumps on Crowley.
We do.
Put a couple of decent crosswalks
We
there.
need some more monitoring also, because we live 3 houses down, like on the residential side of Crowley. We've only been there since May, we just bought the house, and at least 3 times, cars going 65, that way Crowley's a one-way from the park.
The speed bumps.
And we
are-
have, yeah, we're like the only house on our little block right where we are that is child friendly. We have 3 children. Everyone else has kids, they're always out playing. And I cannot tell you how many times I was like panicked because kids are out playing, they're trying to get to the park and somebody's driving the wrong way. There's never anybody paying attention, no.
Wrong way on one.
Oh, yeah, no,
Okay,
and, like,
so-
the cops only come when you don't need them, but like, when you're like, wow, wouldn't it be nice for somebody to actually like pay attention? Because of all the,
brings up what she said about the sun. You drive around the sun, every time you go around the park, it's even on the way, you can go 20 miles an hour. And there are signs everywhere, children at play, yields, stop signs, even if the pedestrian crossing ones, there's them, there's nothing at all.
Yeah.
And then like they also, the only thing that's probably besides 2 speed bumps, in between 2 speed bumps, somebody put a pocket on the
Yeah,
like
put a
stop
stop
sign.
sign.
Yeah.
And they still go through.
They still- yeah.
You at least should put
Well, it's
pedestrian
stop sign, but it's
crossing
confusing,
signs
you're a
where-
real crosswalk.
It's not just Crowley, it's also
Okay.
We need a real cross, we need real crosswalks at the 2 ends and here at the playground where you enter the concession stand from the playground area. I mean, that's like the basic stuff. You know, and again, it's just one of those things that these are little things that aren't gonna cost a whole lot of money. We just need to know who's responsible for it. And we need to get them to prioritize it. But now the city's not going to, because the city's like, oh, they have a park, we're not a high priority area anymore.
Yeah, so we've kind of talked about the entire agenda. All these things are on here.
Sorry.
And
We're trying to add more.
yeah, we'll circle back around on everything everyone's been talking about. So I guess just let's sort of peel each one of the issues apart here. So just to sort of wrap up, again, the planning document, it seems like some follow-up with Black Rock Riverside Alliance on your analysis of the plan, but also I think peeling a little bit out in terms of this district and what are the assets, what are they saying is park, what isn't viable park. We can do a little bit of analysis on that and bring that back.
Oh, and the last thing before I forget, could you have signage on the park on Agri Street that they can park by the park? Because people don't think their cars can park there for some reason, and that would alleviate a lot of parking problems, because people think they can't park on the Agri Street by the park.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, if it
It's a
is,
simple solution.
if it is a parking lane, I'm not sure if that's a parking lane or if that's a bike lane shoulder in terms of what the width
I don't
is.
know if there's no standing sign over there.
Yeah, it's very
There's
nice.
not, right?
Signage one way or the other,
Yeah.
but that's in terms of later in the agenda. But we could sort of go one, what's that?
Please park here.
Yeah. We go one issue at a time. So,
We're sorry.
Yeah.
yeah, so just to sort of wrap up in terms of where we're gonna go, I'm gonna keep this very brief, but we go through a 5-year planning process where over a course of 9 months or so, we have 4 rounds of meetings. We try and pick the best projects. But again, this is a working document. And if we're coming through this process and other priorities emerge, we move towards those other priorities. But we do try and go through an effort. We are going to start this effort again, middle of next year. But in the meantime, we've heard loud and clear, again, from the sort of stakeholders who come to this meeting, from the great work of Demetrius through the change.org and his handwritten petition. There's a fair amount of interest in dealing with the management issue of kiddie pools and all the challenges associated with that, challenges the city's dealing with in terms of staffing, in terms of how these things work, in terms of clearing them out when there's an issue, and transitioning this space and thinking about it like almost like a little mini master plan for this little section in terms of rethinking the space. So just to sort of tee up further conversation, a lot of great ideas already on the board in terms of detailed design, and various aspects of security, programming, et cetera. But the existing pool is a little under 8,000 square feet, 7,700 square feet. For some context, there is an existing splash pad in Cas Park, pretty small one, 3,700. There's a splash pad in Schiller Park. Again, there's splash pads all over the city with that previous map. Another little tiny one, but comparatively, Ralph Wilson Centennial Park, splash pad there, double the size of the area in Riverside. And then we've got Mondo regional splash pads like at MLK Park with the MLK Basin, nearly 6,500 square feet. So there's splash pads of all shapes and sizes. In terms of the context, I don't know if anyone's been to Cas or Schiller, those are small, but they're still fun. And the space we're talking about here is about twice that size, just to give you some idea about what do you want to think about shape and size of the future. So with that, I know a lot of people have other ideas specifically about rethinking this area. We've got maintenance concerns marked down. We've got security conversations. We've got safety along the road. What else are we thinking about here with regard to what it seems like the community wants to move on a major priority project in this part of the park?
Well, that is where the majority of the children are hanging out. Like today, I looked at my coffee and sitting on my step and they were doing soccer practice over there.
Really hushes in there in the morning.
Yeah, you got the free lunch program going. Sometimes people set volleyball over there, which I don't really like to love volleyball, but it's a well-used area of the park for the children. If you were to take attendance on any one day, you have over 100 children in that area between 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Over 100 children.
That's awesome.
It is, that park is crowded with kids. It's like they come out of the woodwork. I love it because I send my grandkids over there all the time. Now my grandkids, but I think we're concerned for the safety of the children is a major priority.
Loud and clear, yeah.
I talked to the bike gangs. We've only had 1 or 2 stupid people that had taken their mini bikes this year through the park. They stopped doing that.
No, it's happening. We had donuts last night. I got contact Bob.
Okay.
Yeah, it's called 911 and 311 and message Joe as well on that. So they're all aware of the situation, but I updated Bob last night here with full blown donuts on the softball.
Got
And I approached them and asked them to please stop and actually continue to make the donut bigger.
Marianne?
We have talked about the lighthouse being a concern, a safety concern. People sitting around there, people, just all kinds of stuff. If we're going to rework the splash pad, add a splash pad or big to it. Can we look at the lighthouse? I know it's sacrilegious to even say that in Riverside, but maybe we can incorporate that lighthouse in a different way. And, you know, make it more used so that people don't hang there.
Yeah, I mean, certainly there's, you know, there's no limit, no reason we need to stay in that rectangle, you know, and then, you know, it's sort of, it's adjacent to, but not connected to that plaza, and, you know, engaging it, maybe, you know, you don't like to say cut down trees, but if the trees are creating visual barriers or isolation, maybe some trees, you know, need to get cleared out to shed some light on things. So yeah, I think thinking about this from that corner of Tonawanda and Crowley all the way to where you start interacting with baseball, you know, is probably the way to think about this space on all sides, you
And
know,
maybe,
baseball's around.
We keep talking about, you know, maintenance facilities, we keep talking about, it's not that you want to drop a maintenance facility in the middle of this, but the maintenance facility is where the people are going to be most, like it's where your staff is gonna be. So maybe there's an opportunity to incorporate something where there's eyes on the property a lot more. I don't know what it is, I'm totally brainstorming, but taking it out there and having eyes on it is gonna be a big deal.
Yeah, so I mean, I can kind of add to that too, being in the Crowley shelter, being from baseball. So if you were to access, the old lifeguarding room, you can actually see clear straight through into, there's one tree that's a little bit of a blockage, but you can see straight through from the back of the building. So where the pool starts on the building, you can see straight through, but there's one tree blocking the view, but you can see it from that building. And I will speak for it, obviously, we've been on the park for 3 years, we are coming back this year.
Thank God.
Yes, new president, we're starting on Monday, guys, so we're coming back. When we have our presidents within that park, it does help a little bit, because they see people at the building and it deters.
Yeah.
So I feel like us being in the park, and, you know, me and my husband are local, so, we're right on Seagram. So for us to drive to the park, it's too much time. So when we get called, we are usually immediately from the park, so we can assess it from our perspective and then coordinate if we need to coordinate. But I'll tell you, just from me and him and our presence being known in the park, it has calmed down, and we can speak to that. The graffiti is nonstop, now that they know we're in the building, it's just.
Just so clear, when you're talking about a tree blocking a view, can you identify what tree?
It's kind of hard.
Is that just a magnitude? Which
Yeah,
direction
so
you're in?
how old is this picture?
This might, I mean, they repaved the streets, it's probably about,
It's
we got the speed bump, so
You
yes.
got the
that's probably
speed bump,
something
so,
like
okay. So the door is right about, so here's the porta potty, this would be the woman's bathroom, here's your entrance, you go straight through, so it's this one. Right here.
that. All right, okay. so-
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, here's one I took 2 weeks ago. Here's a photo I took 2 weeks ago of the trees. So this is from the pathway.
It's this right here, yeah. It's the one to the right of the pathway.
I can send you this.
All right. Okay, so just a sort of big picture thinking on this, it seems like we're really gonna roll up our sleeves on this part of the park.
Do we need a
What-
lifeguard
what else
for
we
the
need?
splash pad?
No, which is why we.
Right.
Yeah, it makes sense because we didn't get the pool, which is like infuriating. You live in a neighborhood where like everyone is so just like, no, you walk by, most houses don't have AC. Where else are these kids gonna cool off when they're not in school?
They're going.
They have
next to
nowhere to go.
Black Rock,
Yeah.
there was a video posted last week of kids probably 12, 13 years old jumping off the bridge of Black Rock Park into it. And then just after I saw that, emergency vehicles were all going into the park, and I was like, oh shit.
And we see it at the foot of Ontario, they do the same thing at the foot of Ontario.
Exactly.
They,
There's nowhere else to go.
they go over the bridge where the park is, they go over the bridge and down, and you see a lighthouse there. And they hop over and go swimming right in that little area. what most kids don't know is there's a drop off, because that's the canal for big ships.
Yeah.
And it's a current,
Yep, them other roads you don't see, they'll take you under.
and people don't realize how fast the Niagara River current is. And by the time you get ready to try to rescue that person, they're halfway down the river.
And they, and there's the ripple effect too. Now, we have the lunch program at Riverside Park.
Yes.
Because there's no water feature there for the kids. There aren't as many kids there. I mean, unless Willie Hutch Jones's programs are going, and we've got lots of kids in the park now suddenly at lunchtime. But I've been there, I was there 5 days in a row, just taking pictures and trying to figure out what I wanted to present for my program. And I was lucky if I saw half a dozen kids and their parents in the playground during from 11 o'clock until 2 o'clock on the hottest days we've had this summer. And that means that our lunch program, who is counting how many lunches they're giving away, is gonna say, oh, you're not getting a lot of kids in your park, so we do really want to continue to do this lunch program. It's that ripple effect again of not having the kids have the amenities in the park that are going to draw them there. And long term, these kinds of things like lunch in the park could potentially suffer. I asked Holly to give me the statistics on where we were, 2 years ago versus where we are now with lunches. I haven't gotten that far, but as soon as I do it, we have to share that with you so that you can understand why this really needs to be a priority for us.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't want to see a dead park. You know what a dead park is? It's a park that doesn't get utilized.
Sure.
This park, my mother was so thrilled when she saw the baseball come in and everything and being so utilized. We want the people in my neighborhood want to utilize the park. The only way we can utilize it is if we got the features, like, and I'm not being offensive, but the bathrooms closed. Nobody wants to use that porta potty because of the.
I can tell you what bathrooms are closed, I just submitted imaging to that as well.
See that again?
And there's deals in that porta potty.
We kicked that out, heroin addict. From
In the
baseball,
porta potty.
he was like trying to live in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, and they sell right along the street, the drugs. And
Yeah.
They
It's
go
just a
can't.
terrible spot to put a porta potty anyway. You're walking into the playground and there you're greeted by this huge porta potty. God knows you walking in and out.
Did you ever wonder why the trees grow so well over there? What do you think the little kids have to go?
I have seen that as well, so I can concur on her that I have not done being.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
They're water.
we in other parts of the park system, we're dealing with people who are begging for a brick and mortar bathroom. We have one here. It's just not operating properly.
Yeah,
So,
I guess, we're talking about construction projects and I guess what would it take to get the park as is properly staffed? Or whatever has to be done.
Okay, well, now you're talking about a different section of the master plan where they talk about funding for parks. And we're going through an effort at the Conservancy about some in preparation for our renegotiation of a contract in 2024 about optimal staffing levels. So I don't have that on the tip of my tongue. We're also running into issues with people applying for the jobs being of good quality. So there's a combination of not enough people. We're also paying, need to work towards paying a competitive salary to get people from other industries to come in and work at the parks. Now that you can go make, a bunch of money in McDonald's flipping burgers, that wasn't our competition a few years ago, but now it is as those wages go up. So it's a challenge. I can't answer your question. I don't want to dodge it, but it's in that Parks Master Plan, some details about parks funding compared to other cities and where Buffalo ranks up. And we're lagging behind a little bit. category.
just so you know, at one time, and it changed. But at one time for years, and I think Marianne's husband can concur, there used to be somebody in the playground all the time.
Oh, every day.
Every day there was somebody at the playground, either give us our equipment to play with or chase us away from the
See, I feel like a lot of that changed though when the whole joint partnership came in. I remember as a kid, we had our own park employees that never left our park. The reason I know it is they're all my friends' dads. They were based out of the ice rink routes. They maintained our park, and the farthest they ever went was right behind Price Right. They would go just that long, because they would ride mowers, and then they go right back to Riverside Park. Where once that joint operation came in, I'm not even gonna lie, Riverside Park got forgotten about. It has looks amazing, and I feel based on the fact that all of your politicians from Buffalo don't. If there wasn't a golf course in Cass would just as Riverside Park. It would. But when you got Mark home cars going to Casmobile Park, Salt Park, everywhere it goes off, it's about presentation. Bring Mark home cars to our park, and he'll keep driving because he don't want to stop. The joint partnership, I feel, is failing in an aspect of maintenance, because the dudes that come to the park, they're there 2 hours, they'll cut that section of grass right there, they're done for the day, we'll finish the rest of it.
I'll get, you know, those are some troubling anecdotes that I think I need to get you some more detail or find out a little bit more about how our crew rolls through.
Since COVID happened, they picked us up park employee base. They completely gave up to a little T-ball field out of Olmsted.
Oh, yeah.
4 years ago, that field was this wide with dirt around. Today, currently,
You can't see her.
you can't even see the field. You can see a little bit of the back out infield, but that's it. Our park has been forgotten. And COVID only made it worse, just like I said, since COVID, they haven't gone around the pool fence with the weed whacker, the baseball commentators look horrible, everything new, we're wrong. I just,
Yeah,
it is a joint effort, your partnership, that
Yeah.
kind of ruined it to where you based Olmsted employees out of that park and only that park. I feel like it worked better because you have a higher presence in that park throughout the day instead of 2, 3, 4 hours. No, by 11 a.m., they're out. I work right across the street.
Yeah, that's-
We want to talk about how forgotten Riverside Park has been in terms of investment in the park.
Yes, you do.
Yes. But I want to let Brian do his agenda.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, this is good, this is good. I guess just sort of circling around, you know, this is gonna be a conversation we continue, and we talk, you know, next steps on this issue particularly. Anything people want to get out with regard to the, oh, yes, sorry. Yeah.
No, it's okay. Just listening to everyone's comments and concerns, it just shows how passionate, you know, everyone is. You know, this is our neighborhood. We have to live here. Olmsted represents Riverside Park. It's a big, beautiful green space. And we should be able to utilize it a lot more, have a lot more child-friendly events, family nights, concerts, to piggyback off the Johnny on the Spot. It's a large park, only one that I've seen in the park. When I go with my family, it's always dirty. I see children climbing on the top of it, which is a safety issue. They'll climb on the top of the porta potty to climb on the top of the building. Yeah, the building, which is still not cool. And, you know, sometimes every now and then I'll say something. But a lot of the children who go to the park are unsupervised. With that being said, safety should be the number one concern. So the porta potty will definitely need to maybe be moved in the middle, for someone to fall, break their neck, and then the first thing that the family are going to do is sue Olmsted. So that needs to be taken care of. but, this area is low income. A lot of the residents over here they don't have the luxury of a vehicle and can't travel to another splash pad. Just last weekend, Saturday, my family and I got to go all the way to Martin Luther King Park. Why? When there's a park like right here. I serve the residents down at the Schaefer Village once a week. Everyone here is, of course, is low income. You're not allowed to have pools. I've seen so many residents breaking the rules, putting up pools, then being told you have to remove the pool. You know, that's not fair. So, you know, because you're low income, you know, everyone should be, you know, should have the same quality of life. So I'm praying that, you know, be listening to everyone here. Olmsted will work expeditiously to get, you know, the issues facing.
Yeah, well, great points.
There's a lot of schools that are open, like, I don't want to close up, but even people who have vehicles that can get there.
They charge you.
They charge you to use it, and they have one adult for every 2 kids. I ran into one park who said, I have 4 kids. I have to find another adult to come with me to take my kids to another group. And I can't always do that because the other adults I know are pretty much working. I'm hanging out with my kid, you know? And so, I mean, there's so many barriers to it being equitable for our community. And we just need to get this done. And we can't wait 3 years before it's prioritized by everybody to it, because we've already been 3 years without a water feature. And this park is getting more and more neglected and forgotten and unused. And the parents are keeping their kids in their houses, so that means they're spending more time on watching TV or playing computer games or whatever. They need to be out in the fresh air in this beautiful asset that they have. So let's get this done.
So if we were to do a sludge, I think I know we should do it in baseball. We own all the grass. The city is controlling the building, the pool, same goes for the other side of the park. So who would be in control of splash pad wise? I know you said plumbing, water, but not a lot comes from the city. Would that now make it an Olmsted feature, or is that still controlled by law?
City, everything involving water other than watering plants, irrigation systems is still the city. So there's a lot of barriers with the pools. Specifically, the barrier is the fence surrounding it that gets chain closed. In a splash pad, those don't exist anymore. So there's more sort of openness. I can follow up in terms of they need to be someone on site. I don't know if that applies just Olmsted maintenance on site. It's complies in terms of someone on site. We can get into that.
The city site just said that there needs to be a employee on site.
Yeah. Yeah, so I can look into the.
It's not necessary. There's 10 ambulances in the city.
Yeah.
They know how to do it.
Exactly. Thank you, Mary.
It's
So I think to answer your question, it would still remain a city facility. It would be more accessible, I think, if it was converted. And I think there's consensus that we need to take this next step. So getting at let's get this done. Again, we are the Olmsted Parks Conservancy. We, organize this community engagement, but we need to, again, take this information and this consensus to the city of Buffalo in terms of follow up with the council member. Step one, I think we're already sort of at the point based on this conversation and following change.org and previous meetings that, waiting until the next 5-year plan is not of interest to anybody. So let's reprioritize, let's sort of move this up. And once we sort of go through notify the city, get them aware of this community support here, then.
We have an issue with the lock is open for 5 years. So we actually had.
We had a on-site meeting with them too, and Joe go on that.
Good.
Amy is kind of on board. That's when he kind of told us, new trees out, you know, word it out, get out around, before you do the baseball thing.
Yeah.
And he's kind of on board at this point, you know, with this flat.
He's seen the condition of the parking, he's blown away, I'll tell you.
Sure.
Like everything else, you know, it's what I'm doing, draw here, just do the talk, so we can see it's.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, you gotta be with the council member, and just have to keep pushing, so that Joe's actually out. There would be a lot of issues, that Joe would be able to take his notes out and go forward from here. And
Mhm.
we need to move faster on the splash pad because it is in the city.
Yeah, yeah. So again, to not delay this process, to not, you know, talk about, let's wait till the next meeting. It seems like this needs to get sort of taken the next step in terms of, we've been talking about kind of a subcommittee or a couple representatives coming with us and opening this conversation with council member and Commissioner Rabb. Yes, Mary Ann.
Thank you. I just think, we threw these together today, so there could be some error here, but it's coming off of your website. So a lot of the stuff is, of the park projects in the Olmsted system that are funded with various funding, you know, various funding processes. Riverside is getting 1% of the total. 1% of the funding, and that's $125,000 for the baseball diamonds. Right?
Well, it was 125,000 for the baseball.
Yeah, there is. One diamond.
That'd be, I think.
Wait, there's more. The 5-year homestead plan with all of the projects that are listed is 3%, it's 3.7% of the time.
You're actually spending more on planning. You've got budgeted more for planning than you have to spend in our park. Your 5-year plan says $730,000, including signage and all that normal stuff that you're doing. Your planning, you've got budgeted at $800,000. How are our people only getting 3% of the total cost for a park that services a very densely populated community?
Yeah,
In addition, there's more.
Yeah.
You know,
I told you like that, Brian. I can't help it, I'm sorry.
there's $730,000 worth of funding that we put out there, right? I mean, things like benches, you know, things like signage. Football fields, baseball fields, I'm not missing those, I'm sure they do a lot of money. Niagara, Oklahoma, we are doing chunk change here. The things that we've got, $125,000 is DASNY funding. As I said, that's the dormitory for it. We are not getting any of the economic development money. We are not getting any of the state money that's being tossed around. We're not getting any of the town money that's being tossed around. We are getting none. So I propose that we change this list to be much more significant. And I threw a list together, which is, you know, this is a conversation. Splash pad number 1, security cameras and playground at the concession stand. Maintenance facility, which you and I have talked about ad nauseum, because you have no place for your people to store anything. The pool, the casino, the ice rink. Gateway improvements for Riverside to the Greenway, which is what Jackie was talking about. I mean, these are millions, but we're worth millions.
mm-hmm.
And then all of the other projects. So I think we need to stop doing $20,000 improvements and start looking at the, you know, $10 million improvements.
A lot of the $20,000 improvements seems like a lot of them just end up being temporary. That's ours anyways, where it's something now, but then, okay, one monument that they put there. Turn into like a whole circle of monuments where they remove the one to refocus everything for like the bleachers. We've had in place, we've had replaced, and they just seem temporary. Like she's saying, if you're gonna do it, go full force on one project instead of splitting that up. I mean, is a temporary thing.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, in parks work, capital projects do become temporary when there's vandalism issues, you know, a pathway, brand new pathway this year, you start planning to replace it in 20 years because it's going to wear down, and that, you know, playground, same way. things are cyclical in that regard. This is a lot to take in. The only thing I'll push back on with the idea that Riverside is getting 1% of the funding is we can't control Kathy Hochul giving MLK neighborhood $50 million and $5 million going to MLK Park. I mean, MLK Park has gotten all of their projects funded with no work on our behalf. You know, that means $5 million goes here, and that means zero feels like it goes other places. That's kind of somewhat
You walk in the
unfair.
door tomorrow with that much money, which Wilson Foundation did.
Yeah.
We have no projects prepared for our community to say, yeah, we'll take that. We'll take
Yeah.
that. Wilson showed up with $100 million. They couldn't figure out where to put it because we didn't have project ready to go.
You know, and why can't you go to the Greenway, the Buffalo Niagara Greenway, and ask for money to repair and make accessible the Gardner overpass? You know, access to the waterfront, that's what they do, get
Yeah.
$200,000 or $500,000 from them or something like that. You know, you've done it for other things, so, you know, again, we're looking. And while that may not be part of your responsibilities, because it may be city, maybe DOT, who knows, it may be.
Yeah. Yep.
That. But, you know, there are avenues to do this, but I feel like nobody's focusing on them. I feel like the only time we get any money is when, you know, the Jordan Lions go out and get a grant to do something in a community reasons, because we're sick and tired of waiting for the city to give us money for community reasons. You know, and we just need somebody bigger to help us prioritize it, and hopefully that will be you with this.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of good information for me to digest. I appreciate it all. I think, you know, let's move forward where we had consensus on this project to sort of advance that. Once we sort of get everyone on board, then we need to identify where are we getting this money from. There's city capital improvement program. There's, you know, state level, you know, dormitory authority is a weird funding source for park stuff, but it's an accessible funding source. It's it's money, you know, $125,000, $125,000. So again, we can look at all the funding levels, but I think we need to just close the loop on consensus that, you know, the council members heard.
Prioritize the splash pad.
Say that again, sorry.
Does anybody not want to prioritize a splash pad? Does
I
anybody
think we're
not
there.
want to prioritize security cameras at the playground and concession area, which will monitor the entire bullhorn? Does anybody not want to prioritize having a maintenance facility that will give a higher visibility for the park staff to be able to be eyes on the park? Does anybody not want to finish the improvements on the ice rink and the pool and the casino? And does anybody not want to prioritize the Gardner Park crossover so that we can get to and enjoy the beautiful trails and waterway that we are the largest waterfront community in the city of Buffalo, and half of our residents don't even know how to get to it or can't get to it safely. So, okay, I think you have your first priorities. We're done.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's
And
great.
he's got like 700 signatures to show that it's bigger than this room of 1520.
Yes. All right, but what I need to, you know, clarify, now we need to find the money. Now we need to find the money, and that is not, we don't have a big pot of money behind us, so let's do it.
Project development money, right? We're gonna need money to design it.
Yep.
And then we're gonna need money to build.
Yep.
So we need to know how much money we need to design it, we need to know how much money we need to build. It's all about the money, honey.
Yep.
It's magic heroes.
I shared some information with you, just one sec. I shared some information with you when we were on that SEC call that you didn't really like those numbers, but those are, again, numbers coming out of the city.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, so preliminary, very like back of the napkin, what they were saying was, you gotta plan on about $250,000 for design and construction, utilities in, and probably $1.5 million to build it.
So two.
So close to $2 million. Yeah. Just without designing it, without getting into the details.
So I have to say.
Yeah. Yep.
Nobody wants to be like.
Yep.
So if you eliminate baby pool, you've already got filtration, you've already got water, all the electric.
It's where you ran
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big construction
I mean,
project.
it would be nice, but that's even, like, that's a, you know, we're getting into the nuts and bolts here, but demo of that is a cost. Yeah.
So we need money to do the design, which is probably a couple $100,000, and then we can.
Yes,
And
yes.
guess what, there's, what was it, $19 million being lost around everybody's else, so I think we can get a portion. I'm not saying of the 19, I'm saying,
Yeah.
if you're talking about budgets that are $19 million, I think our $2 million is a reasonable request.
It certainly is, yeah, it certainly is, we just gotta find it, yeah.
And for the kids to design, I can't go to the league.
UP can provide input, but UP are not gonna be engineers, you know, they're gonna be students, so their work, you can't just hand that to a contractor. I mean, and the city of Buffalo, there are rules and regulations with how you procure consultants and contractors, you can't just let your buddy.
You have a professional engineer review it.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Yeah. The city's got their rules, yes, yeah. Yeah.
Money is wasted daily off of these contracts that seem like they were kept quiet, and this person all of a sudden got them, just like you said with the football. A bad contract. How many bids were accepted out of that you accepted this as one? Was there other contractors that we had done?
Yeah. I mean-
Depending on your funding source, depending on what rules you have to follow in order to get bids and things like that. So like if we get state money, we will be mandated to get a minimum of X number of bids, and we will have to make sure that the bid, the RFP goes out to women and minority-owned businesses and all of that, because there's a whole set of regulations. So,
Yeah, it's all good.
A lot of money being wasted in projects, and just like you said, we work out all kind of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
just.
yeah. The city has a thorough process. All that information you're asking questions about, I don't know it, but it exists. I can tell you how many people bid on it. You know, they accept no bidder, that sort of thing. We're getting into the weeds here.
Subcommittee, Brian?
Sorry?
You need a subcommittee?
I can't hear you.
what do you need? A subcommittee?
Yeah, I think it's basically if, yeah, I mean, through this process, it seems like we got Demetrius leading the charge. We've got BlackRock Riverside Alliance leading the charge. If we think of those people can represent these interests and follow up. All right, River Rock Baseball. Yeah, so I think let's just circle back, you know, in terms of wrapping up this meeting.
Especially you've got a list of people who
We're
come to
there.
our meetings, you should call it out, call a subcommittee. and
Yep.
shows up, becomes part of the sub- Everybody's welcome.
Everybody's welcome. Yeah. All right. So sounds good. So that'll be the next step on this issue. Again, we've got prioritized list to think through, and we'll move it along. Does that feel good enough in terms of a next step for everybody?
In the night, go home and quit so far.
So I'm sorry to
Yes, sir.
interrupt folks, but I'm new here and I'm just so impressed with your passion and your interest and your desire. And obviously with so many layers of government and funding that become obstacles more than they become pathways to success. What has Councilman Golombek, like what has he said to you? Obviously you've met with him already, you've talked with him about these concerns. Where is he? Where did he say his obstacles are?
He said, go
He's given them everything.
So when he says go for it, what does that mean? He puts it back in your court, or is he gonna be involved?
Signatures and see if the community is on board with it, and so we go for it.
It's not a funding source. There's no mechanism for a funding source for this. That's the problem. We're not accessing ESD money. We're not accessing big money to do these kind of projects for our community.
So in the parks budget itself, when the city sets, well, and that's it. So we have a councilman who advocates for his constituents. There's a say, there's a role, there's a voice that's supposed to be emphasized when budget priorities are put in place. I'm assuming, I mean, the state needs to bear its fair share in contributing to projects like this. They're hugely important. But I'm just curious, when the city budget gets compiled and we take a look at the parks portion of it, does the councilman feel like he has a voice in steering some of that park money back home to his home district, or does he feel like? Pardon me? Okay. Okay.
And actually, he has gotten, the J.H. Williams Park got redone. He helped get the playground in. He's pushed for projects in Riverside. I can't take that away from him at all. And we got the state to do a dog park and along a portion of the river on Ontario. But the thing is, the state, I feel, my personal opinion, the state needs to step up and fix that overpay, because that cannot be done by the city of Buffalo. That becomes the DOT. Okay, they're the only ones that can fix that overpass. We don't want to lose it. We want it made so it can be accessible. I would also like in other cities like Boston, just bring them up, because they have a couple of pathways over. If we could have another one between like and by Riverside or something, or by the corner, probably Riverside, where we could go over again down to the river. That would give us 3 points of access to the river for Riverside. The Ontario Street, it would be there, and then it would be in the middle of the park, and that would give the people who grew up access to get down to the river. Okay, it's important. You have to understand, I'm from a generation that grew up with access to that river. That was our livelihood. Black Rock, that was their livelihood.
We have an inaccessible waterfront here. At this point.
And it's horrible that we don't have the right to our river. I cannot begin.
Brian, you don't take the budget shared with you, do you?
So
Olmsted doesn't get the share of the Parks Department budget. You don't get that. do you?
No.
Olmsted gets an allocation.
I do want to keep us on track here. We are running out of time. There's a lot of good conversation. We got a lot of massive ideas on the table now. We've got some next steps. We've just got 5 minutes left in this meeting. So I do just want to sort of close us out with some other updates. And again, look for follow-up on next steps. And I think we can start with this conversation about the splash pad, but then keep the conversation going about all these other projects as well. The investment that is getting made, once the plan is this construction is going to start in October. This involves bleachers, this involves rebuilding mounds, this involves redressing infield and doing the backstop all at diamond number 1 at the corner there, Crowley and Niagara. So that work is going to start in October once the season is wrapped up. As I had mentioned, perimeter security is in the works for next year. We're at the preliminary phase. We will be coming back and talking about, where are the issues, areas, but that process is moving forward.
Carrie's going to that last slide.
Yep.
Actually, can we go back to that last slide? There is also no barrier going into the Crowley Ave right at the playground. They are
Yep.
kind of going there just. so
Yeah,
they're-
that was identified, yes. And then
Yeah,
another
so
issue.
right in there, you can drive right off Crowley, and I've seen people do that as well, right through the playground.
Well, there's a barrier there, it's just too far
Yeah, it's-
over.
you can fit a vehicle.
Yeah.
It just needs to be over like that.
Signage, so again, this is a system-wide, this has.
You still haven't fixed it, Brian.
I'm sorry.
Brian,
I
you're
leave these
consistent,
meetings-
Brian, you're consistent.
I leave these meetings so overwhelmed, that's unfortunately something that's. So again, system-wide, again, this is planning effort because we have to redo the whole city's manual. But then it turns into implementation of fixing all the existing signs. We've got a lot of old faded signs in Riverside Park, and then adding new signs in a logical fashion. So that is, that first step is RFP going out weeks away from happening. In terms of just issues out in the parks, this is something we're talking about system-wide. But in terms of homelessness in the parks, people camping out, you know, it sort of comes and goes in each one of our parks. And the recommendation is, you know, you can call the non-emergency City of Buffalo line. This is again a police issue. But what I realize I need to communicate is that calling the police doesn't mean people get arrested. It means that behavioral health unit comes out. And this is what I've been informed by Tom Champion, the chief of the community police officer division. That unit comes out and these people get help. They don't get arrested. They don't get in trouble. They get the help they need. So we need to involve the police in these issues. Again, we're keeping an eye on it, but everyone can help in that regard. And then as well, we talked about speeding issues. So a speed hump. This is along Crowley, but again, we've started a conversation with the city with regard to slow speeds. We talked about the lack of signage out there. I did a quick little inventory. There are very few speed limit signs anywhere around this park. You know, I marked out the ones that I found, but looking at the area coming into this park on either side, you got to go way down Niagara Street in either direction to see a sign that tells you this is 30 miles an hour in a number of different directions. Right.
You're good. Go
Yeah, yeah, so there's a signage issue, step one, you know, then enforcement is a relationship to build. So again, we need to continue to work on this issue as well, which was already discussed earlier in the meeting. Do you want to announce, do you want to encourage people? Our plan is, Christy has reported to me that over the next couple weeks, is it? We've got over 200 volunteers lined up into River Rock Gardens to start doing some cleanup work there. We want to build on that with, as we talked about at the last meeting, or maybe the meeting before that, we want to plan a volunteer day for the community. We were talking about it in spring. We got the report back, spring's too cold with the winter breezes. So I think, you know, as we look into fall, September, still pretty warm. So we'd like to plan September 10th, morning of. We'll obviously be doing more advertising on this. There's Christy, smiling face. She is here in the room. On the sign-in sheet, there was, if you would like to volunteer, please check the box. So again, please reach out, but we'll be following up in terms of scheduling this opportunity to come out as a community and volunteer. So with that, again, I think we covered everything. If there's anything else people want to bring up, a minute for that, but then, you know, just a wrap up with sort of some thinking about how we move forward from here. Yeah.
I just want to kind of open the floor, because I know I spoke with Bob last night, and I know that Olmsted's not seeing the support from Buffalo PD for the ATVs in the park. How do we change that? How do we change that communication barrier that's happening, so that, you know, Demetrius was just in those fields, ripping those fields for me, and then they were doing donuts in it, so now somebody else again had to go back out today and fix it because our season starts on Monday. And, it will be announced on Monday, but we partnered with Dick's Sporting Goods, and Project Play, which is also a Ralph Wilson Foundation. So we've done, me and my husband over the last, during COVID and a year before COVID happened, we switched it to be a completely free league. Which is something that you don't see out of the inner city. So for me to spend the amount of time and effort that we're putting into it to bring these kids to the park, I just need support for the safety of the children as well. So how do we enhance the safety from the Buffalo PD perspective? Like, are they, like, when we call for safety issues, I feel like they're not dispatching, and I see them driving downtown on the street and ignoring what's going on in the park. So how do we rebuild that relationship or build a relationship that will last so that we can have that partnership?
I know like outside of this, patrol officers, every community has the CPO.
Yep.
We get our community police officer more involved because you live across the street. How many times today, open many bikes, dirt bikes, four wheels, flying through there. And it's starting to cause issues that you're seeing it. I'm okay with, you're starting to really come close to hitting people.
I was on it.
Just something, it's not just Riverside, it's Shoshone, MLK, I hear what you call, what is it on the west side now?
Yeah, Centennial. Yeah.
It's every park, these parks being community police officer more involved because the best way, there was literally 3 cops sitting in front of the White House. Just watching them, they won't do nothing.
And I'm going like this.
Yeah.
As they're flying by me, and I'm like, okay, well, and I called and I said,
Green space, so like, also this room, you the community, so when you get, you can't shop in there all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's just been relationship building. I mean, I think you start with the community police officer. I know they've joined Rediscover Riverside meetings. I think getting them in the room here is a good start. Build a relationship with the district. And then it's like, the people, and it's, they're gonna respond when that relationship is built. So I think that's a good thing we can follow up on.
The police to start as the Blue District Day, Community Day is next Tuesday, at the school right next to the police headquarters on Hurdle. It's from 4:30 to 6:30, I believe, and all of the CPOs and the district officers and a lot of the NAP officers from the city will be there. So it's a great opportunity to meet them and to have conversations with them. The chief will be there, and then, as Brian said, they do show up. The CPOs usually show up at the Rediscover Riverside meetings, and they're really good about, like, hearing about what the issues are, and then having control officers to make sure that more patrols are being done in a specific area, if you're having an area of concern. So that's
As far as that, like, even as far as people in front of the White House.
Yeah.
When you see a bunch of 60-year-old people sitting there, it's kind of a little discouraging to want to take your kids.
Sure.
60 feet from there.
Yeah.
And yeah, the cops drive by. But the sign says no alcoholic beverage. And they're there, and not only are they drinking alcohol, but they've now been.
Tapped into the electric to be able to run radio. Yeah, they're tapped in on the lines, guys.
But we can't get the light bulbs. We can't get the lights working. But we can really get the lights.
They would never have cameras in
Yeah.
their day.
Okay, so we'll circle back. Maybe we can get the CPO in this room, certainly Rediscover Riverside, good
Can I
connection.
just say one thing?
Yes.
It has nothing to do, and this is the sort of thing it does. So, 100% Alliance just launched, a month ago, the Urban Trucks Challenge. And we've included a lot of the Olmsted parks, including, Riverside and the trail going along the waterfront. There are 12 challenges. You have until October 15th to do it. It basically is to show up how beautiful our park system is in the city. So there's Cas Park, there's Shoshone, there's Delaware, there's Rumsey Woods. There's Ship Canal, I forgot that wall, Riverwalk, there's Unity Island. So if you guys are looking for something to do and really want to go out and see some of these other parks, sign up for the challenge. You get this really cool picture that Oslo from Inspired Buffalo designed for us. She's right here in Black Rock and Riverside. And you just do 10 out of 12 plates and you upload your picture and that you shows that you did the hike and you get this really cool patch and you get to see what all these other parks that are being invested in by the city look like so that we can come back with more ideas about what we want in our park system too. So do the urban treks, get out in the parks, appreciate them, love them, and bring more ideas back. Because that's what we want.
All right. Great. Yes.
Brian, we discovered Riverside meets on the 17th, the 16th is the district day. And the 17th, I will try to get representation from the D district to come to the meeting. I bet you they will give me a problem about it because they'll get so tired from the D district day, but we will try. Everything is different since COVID. They never missed a meeting before. I haven't had a CPO show up the last 2 meetings. So we will try. We have 3 CPOs, and when you see them now, mostly they're riding together because our 2 CPOs that work out of the station don't have a car. So the CPO that does have a car is the one that's assigned to the BMHA unit, and he gets a car through them, so he has transportation.
We get a
This
bike.
is how limited our police force.
We can give them a couple bites.
There's an idea. I will try, but we need to get more people out into these Riverside meetings or.
Okay, so you will be advertised for the meetings. We'll be following up on follow-up conversations. Thank you all for all of your great input, all your great ideas, and let's keep this going. I gotta.
We have one last thing. We have a family movie night in Riverside Park on September 23rd. So yeah, it's free for kids and families. So we are partnering with Buffalo Stringworks to pick the movie because a lot of their kids reside in the Riverside neighborhood. So we pick a few films and they're gonna vote in their summer camp. And so once we have the film selected, it'll be screening on September 23rd. Yep, September 23rd. Yep, it's a family movie night at Riverside. Oh, what time in the morning? Okay, perfect. So yeah, maybe they can come by. So
There's a donut park crawl that afternoon. There's a scavenger hunt. There's like so many activities that day. But it'll be perfect for night. What time?
yeah, so it's, I mean, it has to start at night in the front.
Yeah.
So it's my time. Like for example, with the urban checks challenge,
I will send you.
send it to me, we'll post it on social media, whatever you think.
Thank you. Because we really, I mean, we just. And, you know, we have partnered with Inside Chronicles and they encourage people to go like to watch. And, you know, they do like.